Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today as I interview Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm very excited for this one because Dr. Chaffee is a passionate carnivore diet advocate, and he is actually a neurosurgery resident, completing his residency in Perth, Australia, and a former professional rugby player. So I guess, first of all, welcome. And I guess we can start by having you tell us a little bit more about your background and how a carnivore diet impacted your rugby career and now your medical career.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's very nice to meet you. As far as my background goes in carnivorism and athletics and medicine, because I was always interested in athletics and I wasn't interested in science and medicine, it just naturally fell in that I was interested in nutrition, because from a medical biological standpoint, it was very interesting. And from an athletic standpoint, I was really interested in giving my body the best fuel that it needed to perform at my best. And so I studied this early on, obviously learned all the same nutritional guidelines and same, sort of stories that everyone says, and this was just the traditional teaching. And so I looked into that, and I did that, and I didn't notice anything too untoward. I was still having a lot of success in rugby. But I worked very hard, and I was eating sort of the same things other people were, and I was doing well, so I thought that was fine. But I sort of fell into carnivorism on accident because I was taking cancer biology in college, and we just learned how toxic plants were. And this was something that I learned actually in 7th grade biology, that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous, so less and less animals can eat them so they can survive and thrive and protect themselves. All living things have a defense down to single-celled organisms. And while animals can run away or fight back, plants can't. And so one of their main defenses is by using, chemical deterrents and toxins. And then animals evolving along with them to be able to break down these toxins safely so that they can eat that plant and other animals can't. So that's their dedicated food source, and they don't have to compete for resources, like a koala with eucalyptus and so on. There are tons of examples. So we were learning this from a cancer perspective, and we were learning about all the carcinogens that were in plants like vegetables and spinach and Brussels sprouts. And we learned that there was 136 known human carcinogens just in Brussels sprouts, over 100 just in white table mushrooms, and it's spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, anything you have ever eaten that has come out of the ground. We were getting lists of these things, and it had 60, 80, or over 100 known human carcinogens in them. And they were quite abundant. And we know this from the 1980s, from the work of Professor Bruce Ames, that there's 10,000 times more naturally occurring poison by weight in the plant like spinach than the pesticides we spray on them. This is why we still have pesticides. They were trying to criminalize them back in the 80s. They were successful with some of them, but then other ones, they stopped it after this research came out and said, well, no, actually the plant is worse. So yes, the pesticides are bad. The spinach is worse than that. And so we were learning this. We're quite blown away. And it was really hard to believe, but then it sort of started sinking in that, no, this guy's serious. He's actually, not joking around. And I remember thinking in my head, and I was like, but vegetables, are still good for you though, right? Like overall. And he just looked at us and he said, I don't eat salads, and I don't eat vegetables, and I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. And so in my head, I was like, right, screw plants. And I just stopped. And so anything that had a plant in it, anything, grains, breads, fruits, vegetables, obviously, spices even, I just cut out from my diet completely. And so by default, I just started eating eggs, meat, and milk. And at first it felt very, very restrictive. I started looking at all the things. The only thing I could see were the things that I couldn't eat. And it was very hard for me. But after about 2 weeks, I stayed strong. I just didn't care anymore. And I started really enjoying meat and really enjoying the taste of it. I didn't want anything else. And I just felt amazing. My athleticism just went through the roof. I was training at least 6 hours a day, if not 8 or 9 hours a day, every day while in university. and playing with the university team, playing with my seniors team. and, playing all-star, doing, trials for the U.S. national team and so forth. I was an All-American in high school and so forth. So this was something that was a big part of my life, and changing my diet like this just changed everything. I had the absolute best season of my entire life that year. And then I also stopped drinking at the same time. And so I always thought that it was, oh, that was it. But looking back on it, no, it was both, because the season after that, again, had another, fantastic season and kept going like this. And so I decided I'm not drinking during the rugby season either. Subsequently, when I was playing professionally in England, I was still not drinking, but I started slipping off the diet. I started eating meat that had sort of breading on it. And I was like, well, is that big of a deal? Sort of more difficult to get the meat that I wanted in England, unfortunately. And so I was like, well, is it making that big of a difference? And it did. It absolutely made a big difference. I was still not drinking, but then I was just having a bit of a breading on this meat that I was eating, and I felt entirely different. I started getting aches and pains. I never got sore before. Now I'm getting sore. It was confusing to me. I didn't know why the hell this was happening. And I was a bit more run down. And I remember thinking to myself, why don't I feel as just, superhuman as I normally do? Am I just not working as hard? I was 25 at the time. I was like, is that it? Am I over the hump? And I'm just dying from here. And I couldn't really figure it out. But years later, when I sort of really came across hard data to show that humans really are biologically carnivores, and it's just snapped into place. I said, that's what I was doing. That's when I slipped off. That's when I started eating things that weren't pure carnivore. And that's why I started feeling differently. And at that moment, I was just like, right, screw these things, get these things out of here. And I was sort of just turned 37, 38 at the time when I came to that, come to Jesus moment, and went like, my God, I knew plants were trying to kill me, just get these things out of here. And again, it was like I was 22 again. And I was, again, just couldn't really get tired, couldn't get sore. And I could just push myself. I started practicing and training with the Seattle Seawolves, which is the Major League Rugby team that I grew up playing with. It turned into the professional Major League Rugby team. And I was just back from Bangladesh. I was completely out of shape, but I felt amazing. And I was like, right, I'm going back and playing rugby. And even though I hadn't trained in months and I wasn't in good shape before I went to Bangladesh by any means, I was able to keep up with everyone in practice who had been, training the entire time I was gone. These are all professional athletes, all great athletes. And I was bang right there with them. We did, endurance tests and fitness tests and so forth. I was, even though I hadn't been running, just a couple of weeks of practice, I was in the, sort of the top tier of people in that, simply because of my diet. And I was fat. Like, I wasn't like bloated, but like for me, I was carrying a lot of extra weight, and still I was performing to a very high degree. And then after that, I just started shredding fat and stacking on muscle, and just got fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter. And it was just like I was back in my early 20s again. And I just felt amazing. I still feel amazing. So that was in a nutshell, 20 years of experience with it.
Experience with that. And now, so you're 42 now, correct?
42, yeah, just
right.
turned.
So 37, 38 is when you went back to like a really strict carnivore. So how do you eat right now?
I mostly eat beef, but when it's quite an easy way of eating. I don't have timing. I don't time my meals. I don't weigh my meals. I don't measure them. I eat when I'm hungry, and I eat until I'm satiated. And it doesn't matter what time of day or night. It doesn't actually matter if you eat in the middle of the night, unless you're eating carbohydrates. That disrupts some of your hormonal signaling, such as growth hormone and so forth, which is secreted at its highest level about 2 hours after you go to sleep. And so insulin opposes that, and so you end up sort of screwing yourself if you eat carbs right before you go to bed. But you see animals in the wild, they like carnivores, they'll eat, they'll make a kill, they'll eat, and then their body goes, right, rest and digest, store the energy, take it easy, and they'll sleep. And that's what I do. So I tend to eat later in the day. Well, I'll have my big meal, but if I'm hungry during the day, I'll eat during the day. But it's beef predominantly, but I'll also have eggs or, pork and chicken, rarely chicken, but mostly beef.
Mostly beef. Do you care if it's grass-fed or conventionally raised?
Not too much. I definitely noticed a difference. I got a grass-fed cow, completely grass-fed its entire life, up in Washington State when I was back helping out my folks with some health issues before I came to Australia. And also, this was a 10-year-old cow, which tastes way better than any other cow you'll ever get from the store. It's just so much more beefiness. It's actually real flavor to it, and the fat is dark yellow, that's what it really means to be grass fed. If the fat's white, it may not actually be completely grass fed, because not everybody knows this, but your fat is yellow. When we do surgery, when we cut people open, the fat's yellow. It's a dark yellow, and so white fat is not a normal thing. And so that's what you look for a real grass-fed cow, is yellow fat. And so this had a very dark yellow fat, and it tasted absolutely amazing. And it actually felt like I was just imbibing just pure energy. And I just felt amazing on the stuff. And actually it was a lower fat content than, store-bought meat, but I felt amazing. I felt fabulous on this stuff. And, that is my preference. But at the same time, I feel absolutely outstanding on just, Safeway beef. The way I think about it is, like the difference between someone who gets gold and silver at the Olympics. Silver lost to gold, but silver also beat everything else on earth. So, okay, you didn't get gold, but silver's pretty damn good at the same time if you can't get gold.
Do you do dairy?
Very rarely. So, and if I do, it's in the context of meat. I'll use it as a condiment. So I'll melt cheese onto meat, or, actually last night I had some ground beef and I put some, sour cream on the top of that. And that tastes, is very nice, very complimentary. And, and so I'll do things like that. But I'll, every few months I may have a glass of milk, but, milk has a high enough lactose content that it's going to raise your insulin, which is something I don't want, because that will disrupt your metabolic pathway and screw up your energy mobilization. So I keep it to a minimum. Almost 99% of what I eat is beef, really. Do you get cravings then? No, I don't. If I do drink milk, though, I will crave more milk, and that's those carbs, asking for more carbs, basically. Mm-hmm. When you eat carbohydrates, you raise your insulin, and this blocks energy mobilization. It forces energy into cells. It doesn't allow it to come out of cells, and then your blood sugar starts dropping, and you don't really feel well, and then you want a hit of energy, and you start thinking about those carbs in the fridge, and then you keep going after them. So if I were to drink milk, I definitely want more milk. And that's why I stay away from it as well. Right. And I think also when people start, like they need to remember that it's going to go away eventually. Like at first you have deep habits and things you do with food, or certain instances where you think of certain foods. And if you just stick with it, I think 2 weeks for most people is good enough. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I certainly noticed that. I never experienced anything more than 2 weeks. And the second time I did it, came back around to it, because I knew what I was doing now. I knew what I was doing and why I was doing it and the importance of it. And I knew so much more after that, because I'd been through medical school at this point. I'd researched a lot of things. I knew about, how dangerous fructose was, and how actually saturated fat and cholesterol actually were good for you, and so forth. So I had a lot of other I had a larger background now, and so it all made sense. And I started looking at medicine in the context of humans being carnivores. That's the animal that we are, but we're eating the wrong thing. Just like a zoo animal that gets fed kibble is going to get sick, it's going to get fat, it's going to get diabetic, it's going to have arthritis issues, and everything just started slotting into place. So it was very easy for me, once I really knew what the hell I was talking about, to just get it out of my system, because I wanted nothing to do with it. And so I don't remember getting any cravings, but I wouldn't have cared anyway. I very rarely will sort of smell something or see something, go, oh, that kind of smells nice. And I remember it tasting good, but I honestly just don't care. I have not been tempted to any real degree. I look at things and people are eating it, and it's like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, but that tastes good. Big deal. I'd rather feel as fantastic as I do all the time than you eat something nummy every now and then, because it really does make a big difference. You just take a little bit of this stuff, it will screw your system up for a few days even. And I just don't care to do that.
And do you take supplements, or do you recommend people take supplements?
For the most part, no, I don't think you need to take supplements. I don't take supplements myself, and I've had all my vitamins, minerals, and hormones and things like that tested, and I don't need them. The short answer is that people should get tested if they're worried about that, and you don't take supplements unless you're deficient. If you are deficient, then there's a reason for that, but there's very little actual true deficiencies when you're on a carnivore diet. You must be doing something differently, because if you're eating what you evolved on, what you're biologically adapted and designed to eat, by definition, you shouldn't have any sort of deficiencies, because this is your optimal diet. If you need to take supplements just to get basic nutrition, then by definition your diet is deficient, right? Koalas don't need to take vitamins, right? Dolphins don't have to get B12 shots, right? Yeah. So this is something that is abnormal. This is not something you'll find in nature. And so if you're eating to your nature and you're eating a biologically appropriate diet, then no, you shouldn't have to supplement. So I recommend people, sort of avoid that sort of thing. If, early on, maybe they have some deficiencies because they're eating deficient foods, and maybe they need to sort of catch up. But after you've been on carnivore for a couple of months, that should not be an issue. But get tested. You can always check this out. People assume that they're potassium deficient or magnesium deficient or whatever, and they say, oh, I need to take these supplements. But are you? I mean, have you been tested? There are areas that actually have deficiencies in the soil. And so the plants and the grass that grow in those soils actually are deficient in some minerals, like magnesium and zinc, in Australia in particular. And so most Australians have zinc and magnesium deficiencies. When I got mine taken, mine was low normal, but it was still normal. And I was talking to my friend who's an endocrinologist who did all my bloods, who was very interested in whether I was dying inside or not. And so he wanted to do all my blood work. And he said, I mentioned this before, but he said that if you took 100,000 people off the street who were my age and you did all their bloods, that mine would be number one without a shadow of a doubt. And I was taking no supplements. And he actually remarked on the fact that I had normal zinc and magnesium. He's like, everyone in Australia is deficient. Everyone has to take these. So that's actually, pretty incredible that, you don't have to do that. So I think for most people doing carnivore, I don't think you need to, unless you're in one of those areas that has a deficiency. And, and if you're in doubt, you can just get tested. That's the best thing to do.
So were you able to convert him? And second of all, do you get pushback? You were. Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. So he actually has incorporated that into his practice now. So he actually recommends a carnivore diet for people.
Conventionally trained, obviously.
Yeah. And he's been in practice. He's been in practice for 40 years, and but he always incorporated diet into his practice as well, because he did hormonal medicine, but also bariatric medicine, functional medicine, and preventative medicine. These sorts of things where you're trying to get people well and keep them well so they can come off their medications, as opposed to just going on more and more medications just to keep them stable and sort of flying along until they crash and burn.
Put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of fixing the problem or looking at the underlying cause of the problem, just patching it up and making it look pretty so you can sell it and then move on, like a used car salesman or something like that. But it's it's something that he's actually incorporated into his practice. He actually invited me to work at his practice simply based on all of this. And so I've been seeing patients there. He sees patients there, and this is what we recommend. And we're seeing fantastic results with people, and even people that have been stubborn in their weight loss. Not they're stubborn people, but they've had difficulty losing weight and getting healthy. That putting people on a carnivore diet really does seem to be something that does work for everyone, even these challenging patients.
Do you get pushback from your peers, given that it's so rare to find a doctor who's advocating for a carnivore diet?
Yeah, sometimes, but actually quite rarely. So there'll be people that are quite, amazed by, like, really, is that really it? But 99% of people are interested. If I wasn't, in the physical shape that I look to be in, I'm actually not in very good shape, because I haven't been in the gym in literally 4 months now at this point, which is just killing me. But, I look like I go to the gym twice a day, every day. And so, they look at me and just go like, and I'm telling them what I do. And then, and they see me physically and they just go, okay, well, I mean, there may be something here, because this guy, looks like he's in great shape. He's not, it's not like some, fat diabetic doctor going like, you need to do this or that. And it's just like, maybe I probably shouldn't listen to you. But most of them are interested in, or at least ask questions. And then we they ask questions, and we just have a discussion, and I show them resources and show them studies and show them, the evidence that I'm working with. And I think I've convinced basically everyone I've spoken to that I've worked with that this is really the way to go. Now, most of them have tried it. Not all of them have succeeded, but by different family pressures and so forth, not everyone in their household doing it, etc. But almost all of them eat a lot more meat now, and a lot of them have gone carnivore as well, and really enjoy it.
That's interesting. And I guess during your residency, you're not giving out nutrition like as your main focus, right? So it's not something that comes up also every single day, right?
It can though, it's, because these people can be quite unwell, and they'll often ask, because these people get very involved in their own health, and they want to be involved in their own health. They don't want to feel helpless and this is just happening to them, so they want to say, okay, what can I do? How can I help this? How can I make my situation better? And when you're talking to someone like that, and you actually know, because you have study after study after study after study, and hard empirical evidence showing that there are absolute benefits to specific dietary changes, I feel that that's unethical to not say something. And so I don't push this on anyone. I don't say like, oh, this is what you need to do. But when someone asks me directly, is there something I can do? I feel obligated to, to take the time out and talk to them about it. And, but the main thing being that, like, look, best thing that you can do is make your body as healthy as possible so that you can heal, so that your body can fight off whatever we're dealing with. And you can do this in the most healthy and safe fashion. And then they'll keep asking me, okay, well, what do I do? What do I eat? What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah. And I'll tell them, because I don't want to push this on anyone, and it's completely out of the scope of neurosurgery. And so, I preface all these things by saying, look, these are my own resources, my own views. This does not reflect anything on the hospital or the department. This is not our guidelines. This is just me talking to you because you asked a question, and they say like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I let them know, and I try to give them the information that they need and the resources that they need to look it up themselves, because I always ask them, please look this up yourself. You look at these studies, look at these lectures, see these experts, look at their work. This isn't my work. I'm just repeating what someone else has done. And I've tried to take bits and pieces from various different sources and amalgamate that into something that works for people. And so here are the resources. You do it yourself and see if you want to do it, and see if you want to try and see how you go. So it actually does come up more often than you'd think. And that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to start a YouTube channel, is because it's just very time consuming, because like you say, it's very, very out of left field. And so people really need time to digest this. They have a lot of questions to ask, and they really want to know just what the hell is going on. So I could, sometimes, spend an hour with someone when I really don't have an hour to spend with that person, but, they deserve it, and they want to know about it. And I feel that it's important to let them know if they want to know. So that was one of the things now. And now I can just mention it and just say, hey, actually I have a lot of, talks on YouTube. You can just check it out and see what you think. And I have resources in there. You can look up the studies yourself and see what you want to do.
Interesting. And since you're in neurosurgery, you have experience with mental health, maybe, right? And how that is affected by a carnivore diet. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. And also, I heard you one time talking about your experience with your father having Parkinson's disease, and maybe also you can shed light on that.
Yeah, so yeah, in neurosurgery, we have a lot of obviously a lot of pathologies that affect the brain, affect the function of the brain. We don't deal as much with psychiatric issues, depression, anxiety, or schizophrenia and so forth. But I did have a talk with a friend of mine, Natalie West, who's a clinical psychotherapist, and she was talking about, actually there's tons of studies and tons of research showing that this actually does help with psychiatric issues. And I've certainly read the literature on depression and how higher LDL cholesterol is actually protective against depression and anxiety. And people that have lower LDL cholesterol, this is associated with an association does not equal causation, of course, but there is an association with higher depression and anxiety rates. And more concerning is that people with low LDL cholesterol and depression have a much higher rate of suicide. So that's something that, right now in practice, psychiatrists are encouraging their depressive patients with low cholesterol to get their cholesterol up. That's very important. As far as my father with Parkinson's, I actually took time off from my specialist training. Actually left my program to help my parents who were having health issues. And one of those things was my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's and had some other issues as well, compounding that. And he was having a difficult time because he had some complications after his surgery that really set him back, made him very unwell, really sapped his energy, and he really didn't recover from that for a long time. He was very, very weak from that for I don't know, a year more. And then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's on top of that. And so unfortunately he started, getting much more, much more quiet and wasn't talking as much. He wasn't really able to do as much. He was having serious memory issues. He was getting confused in conversations that we were having sometimes as well, that he would never have been confused in before. And so, this really looked like this was going to be progressive, and this was going to continue down that road, which is very, very scary to watch anyone you love go through that. And when I started doing this research and realized that humans actually are carnivores, and this is what was providing me such benefit in my early 20s, I really dug into the research. I really dug into the literature and started, finding out new and different things and asking questions. Well, if this, then we should see something like this. I started looking through the literature to see if we actually found that, or if we found something else, and trying to disprove my theory. But I kept coming up with different pieces of information that was very interesting. And one of those was the fact that our brains are made out of fat and cholesterol and so forth, and we get peripheral insulin resistance in our bodies and our muscles, but also in our brains. And so when you're eating carbohydrates and so forth, and you have insulin resistance, energy can't get into your brain properly. And and then, as I argue, what we call a fasting state in biochemistry, I don't believe that is a fasting state. I believe that's our primary metabolic state. I think that's where all of our heavy machinery comes to bear. And that's the metabolic state of pretty much all animals in the wild as well. And so looking at that, we run on ketones. Our brains are always running on ketones, but they have run on a lot of ketones when you're in the fasting state, so-called fasting state. And so this bypasses that. So this bypasses your insulin resistance, because who cares? You're not running on glucose, you're running on ketones. And so all of a sudden, the brain will pick up and you have better cognition and so forth. And this also helps heal and repair the brain. The brain is made out of very long chain fatty acids, 20 and 22 chain fatty acids. These things don't exist in plants. They only exist in animal fats, and we don't really make them that well. You have DHA, you have EPA, 70% of the solid matter of our brain are lipids, fats. And 20% of those lipids are DHA, don't exist in plants. We don't really make it. You need it from the food that you eat, which is animal fat. And so there was also studies looking at treatment modalities using a high-fat ketogenic diet as a treatment for Alzheimer's. And this was found to have, better efficacy in treating, active Alzheimer's patients than all of the medications that had been trialed thus far. So that's very exciting. Then you learn about lectins and how they actually track up your vagus nerve to go into your brain and kill, the cells in the substantia nigra. And sorry?
The dopamine producing cells.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in substantia nigra, exactly. And this can be implicated in Parkinson. So you're reading all this, you're finding all this stuff out, and I'm just study after study after study. I'm getting really excited about it. I'm not pushing this on my family or my folks, but I'm just really excited. I'm, wow, this is really interesting. And look at this and look at this. And eventually my parents decided to try it just because, they just sort of saw the results I was getting, and they kept hearing about, how excited I was. I found this study and that study and the other study and all these different things that I was learning. And they just said, okay, well, right, well, we'll try it. And so in 1 month, my father was just a different person, and he was still eating low fat, actually, because he was, he was brought up in the days of Pritikin, where it's just like, you just don't eat any fat at all. So he was not eating plants. He was only eating meat, but he was eating quite lean meat. And still, he was just a different person. But he was getting quite constipated. And he mentioned that one time. Now he's up, he's boisterous, he's walking around, he's walking around quickly. He's not shuffling around like an old man. He's walking around like my dad. And he's having conversations. His memory is better. His cognition problems are gone. And, he's just my dad again in 1 month, right?
So he was doing carnivore diet, even though it was lean, but it still gave him amazing benefits.
Yeah. So
I think we should also address that.
Yeah. So he had, was mentioning to me that he was constipated. And at that time I had, just come to the realization that it's actually, excess fat that drives your digestion, keeps your stools soft. And this is actually a good thing. You want this excess fat, because your body, we make bile in order to emulsify and absorb fat, but bile is a limited resource, and your body's going to make a certain amount of bile physiologically. I would argue that your body's probably going to make the amount of bile that your body wants to absorb. Maybe it doesn't, but we don't have any clue one way or the other. And I think that makes physiological sense. And either way, there's a limit, and at some point you're going to run out of that. Your body can absorb some fats, usually like the medium chain fatty acids, but mostly they go out without bile. And it's this excess amount of this excess amount of fat that surpasses the bile that then keeps stools soft. So if you have soft stools, you're getting enough fat with that bit of extra. If you're getting dry, hard stools, then your body's absorbing every ounce of fat that you eat, and you're getting these dry, hard, constipated stools. And if you're eating a lot more fat than your body can absorb, you'll just get loose stools, but it just passes through. It's not an infection. You're not sick. It's just a little more fat, and but it's not bad for you. So my dad was getting constipation. And so that made me realize, oh, actually you're trimming the fat. So I told him all that, what I just said to you, but I also said, that's the important part for your brain. Those are the fats. Those are the things that are going to heal your brain, that your brain is going to use to rebuild its structures and function and maintain itself throughout your life. And he just went, oh yeah, all right. And he just started, getting into the fat. I've never seen that man eat fatty meat. Like, he just never did, because his parents died of cardiovascular issues. And so he was just very, very concerned about that his entire life. And, he didn't want to die of a heart attack and leave his kids fatherless. And so he was just like, I'm not going to eat any fat. And now he was eating fat. And that was probably the first time I've ever seen the man eat bacon. And then they drank, my dad, asked my mom to get whole milk. I told my sister that. She was shocked. She's, what? Dad got whole milk? So, and then in another month after that, when he was just eating fat, it was just, any inkling of a problem was just gone, and his body and his brain just started healing and getting better and better and better. And he's just been getting stronger and stronger and more healthy. It's been absolutely wonderful to watch.
And how long has that been happening?
Oh, a good 3.5, 4 years now. Yeah.
Wow. So you've converted him basically, and
Yeah.
it worked for him. I wonder what his doctors must have said after this transformation, because
Yeah.
Parkinson's,
Yeah.
supposedly degenerative, it doesn't get
Mm.
better, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, he was only exhibiting very mild symptoms anyway. So at first place, so it wasn't like he had really full blown Parkinsonism. So it was quite subtle to begin with. So it's hard to tell, how much of a difference it made. Certainly made a difference with his cognition. Certainly made a difference with his memory. Certainly made a difference with his, how he felt in himself and his body. And he started exercising, started doing spin classes. He started going out and doing yard work. And the man was 80, and I called my brother once, and I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm driving over to mom and dad's house." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're just going to visit or what?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, I wasn't planning on it, but." Mom called me and said, Dad's outside with a chainsaw trying to cut down some trees, and she wants me to make sure he doesn't kill himself. I was like, okay, all right. Whereas, 6 months earlier, the maximum amount of energy this guy had was to get from his room to the couch and watch television. And that was literally it. He really was so wiped out from the different sort of complications from
Wow.
his medical issues that he really didn't have more than that. And it would be days that I wouldn't hear him speak. And so that was a very big turnaround.
Wonderful. There's something that I absolutely want to ask you about, because I think we both share a lot of excitement for anti-aging. So what are your thoughts on prolonging our life on a carnivore diet, and just anti-aging in general?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously very interested in that as well. And I think that if you can maximize your health, you're going to live to your genetic potential and capability, which already is going to extend your life and your health by decades. Most people, the average life expectancy in America is 77, 78, something like that. And obviously that's from birth, and people, when they have childhood mortality rates and so forth, will sort of bring that down. When you get to your 30s and 40s, your average life expectancy will be higher than that, but it's still pretty piss poor when you realize that genetically we are designed to live 120 years. And we've known that for a couple of decades now. That you measure telomeres and other sort of chromosomal and genetic markers. That's how old we should be living, is about 120 years. And so that means if you just stay out of your own way and don't do anything wrong, you should live to 120. Like if you don't get killed, you should live to 120 without doing anything special. And yet we're dying in our 60s and 70s. And that's literally middle-aged. So you look at native populations and so forth, and their own records, they're saying, this person's 110, and they're out there herding, caribou and things like that. Couldn't possibly be. People just dismiss it. Now, okay, yeah, they don't have a government provided birth certificate, but they're not stupid people. They can count. And so maybe they're exaggerating, but every single person, every single time, on every single continent, and every single culture, they're all saying this, they're all doing this. And I go back to one of the earliest historian, Herodotus, who chronicled a meeting between the Persian emissary after they just took over Egypt. They were going down south to their new neighbors in Ethiopia. They're speaking to the king of Ethiopia. And the king of Ethiopia asked them, what does your emperor eat? How long do your people normally live? And, the guy explained, growing wheat, which is, not a common, was not, ubiquitous around the world at this point, described making bread and so forth, and said that, our people usually live about 70 years. And the king of Ethiopia just sort of laughed at him and said, well, no wonder you live such short lives if you eat that, if you eat dirt. Like we only, eat the boiled meat, and we only drink the milk from our cattle, and we would live 120 years, some people longer than that. So that sounds like a boast. It sounds braggadocious, and maybe it was, but it's spot on with what we know as geneticists is our average life expectancy that we should be living to if you're not killed. And everyone conflates average life expectancy from birth with how old people were actually living. You know, in 1850, the average life expectancy from birth in America was 36 years old from birth. But if you get to 10, the average life expectancy was 56, right? Because you have infant mortality, you have large rates, high rates of infant mortality, and high rates of death and delivery, and childhood diseases and so forth, and accidents and all these sorts of things. So that brings down the average significantly. But when people actually got to adulthood and didn't die in a war or a plague or famine or something like that, they actually lived to be very old. I mean, how many historical figures do we know of that were in their 70s, 80s, and so forth, and still, doing great work? I think Ben Franklin was like 64, during, when the Revolutionary War started, and, Socrates was in his 70s, pissing people off before they killed him, and they had to kill him. He wasn't in an old folks home just turning to dust. They had to take him down. So, Dr. Salisbury of the Salisbury Steak, he did a 30-year research project into, the optimal human nutrition, wrote a book about this, basically arguing the same thing that I argue and that I'm writing a book on the subject of, which is basically the food that we're eating is causing these diseases. And if you remove these foods and you eat the appropriate things, these diseases go away. And so he was curing people with Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, gout, tuberculosis, and so forth, by putting people on a pure red meat and water diet. And he did, 30-year research project on this. He was living with the Native Americans who were just eating buffalo and meat. And he was talking about how like these guys are living to be 110, 115 years old. And I'm watching them. They're like running around with a pack on their back and, following the buffalo herds and this, that, and the other. I mean, these are active adults at 115, and so, that's quite remarkable at that point.
What year was that book published, where he was doing all this research?
It's the late 1800s. It's the late 1800s when he was published. I don't know the exact date. I think it was, I don't know, 1870s or something like that. But anyway, later 1800s.
That's a long time ago.
This book. Yeah, it is. And, and his book was called the relation between alimentation and disease, alimentation being, what we eat, and disease. And so, he just showed this, and that's what a Salisbury steak was. It's named after him. It's like just a hamburger patty without the bun. And, he was curing these people. And, people have, we didn't have treatments for rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's or, even tuberculosis, for a very long time after that, like for the former few illnesses, like 100 years. Maybe we had some steroids at that point. We certainly didn't have, the DMARDs, the biologicals, and the medications that actually do anything now. And he was curing these people. This was going away. And so these people were really sick. So, they didn't catch this early. They didn't have early treatments. These people had horrible lives. They were bloody, painful diarrhea all day, every day, and would probably die from these sorts of things, because they get infected and rupture their bowel. And, we didn't have anesthetic back then. We didn't have sterile practice. And so you can't open the abdomen because they'll, like 25% of people will die of infection. So this was not deemed ethical to do that sort of surgery until, sort of the 1880s, 1890s and so forth. And so these people were very, very unwell. And so that's why the Salisbury steak is a special way of grinding beef, where you just sort of do it in a way that you filter out the gristle, and it's just the muscle meat and the fat and so forth. And then you sort of mostly get the muscle meat, and then you sort of add back in butter and things like that. And this is because it's harder for your body to break down and absorb the gristle, but you can absorb everything else. And so, even if we just eat a normal steak and don't do that, you're going to absorb 99%, 98, 99% of the meat that you eat, depending on the cut. And he made this, so basically 100%. So this completely rested these guys' bowels. And so they would eat this thing and it would just be liquefied and absorbed, within 40 minutes or so. And none of it would get down into the colon to cause any sort of residue, to cause any sort of discomfort, because these guys had bleeding, raw, horrible intestines. You didn't want anything going through there. And so these very, very unwell people, that's what he made that for specifically. But he noted also that the Native Americans who were just eating red meat and fatty red meat at that, they were living to great ages with great health. And so, you know, if you just do that, if you just get rid of poison and you stop being poisoned, you're going to live a lot longer. Slow poison is still poison. If something's killing you in your 80s when you should live to 120, you've been poisoned. You've died prematurely, 4 decades prematurely, and you were sick leading up to that as well. So no, thank you. And you just, so that's why I just want to get rid of this sort of stuff. People say, oh, I wouldn't want to live to 120. They're thinking in the context of like what people look at 80 now and how decrepit and tired and frail they are, and extrapolating another 40 years of deterioration. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being in peak physical condition and health and optimal health that whole way through. And, you know, being 115, 120, and probably being, you know, better than someone who's in their 70s or 80s now, who, you know, eats a standard American diet, maybe smokes and drinks. Definitely someone who smokes and drinks, you're going to be better off than them. And so you can just get yourself to 120 anyway. Then if you're exercising and so forth, we do know that growth hormone and testosterone, estrogen, these things are increased by carnivore diet, but also by exercise and strenuous, strength training and so forth. And growth hormone has been suggested that this can actually lengthen your telomeres as well, and extend your life that way. So this is why exercise is such a benefit to longevity. So you're just eating carnivore, you're going to feel a lot better anyway. You're going to want to exercise more. You're going to want to be more physically active. And by being physically active and by exercising and weight training and so forth, you're going to stack on the years as well. And then, I'm sure there's a lot of other medical innovations that we'll have between now and then that will beef us up. I think there's someone I was talking to the other day. They're looking into NAD injections, and that when these are done IV, there's, I haven't looked at their data, but they're saying that their data is showing that these again, lengthen telomeres and will extend life as well. And
in humans, did they do this?
Well, that's what they're saying. I don't know. I haven't seen their stuff. So, but it's enough that they're already starting to do this in some longevity clinics and so forth. And the guy I was talking to, it was sort of secondhand information, but the person I was talking to was trying to get me to look into it and say, hey, you should look into this because this other doctor that they know is doing that. And that doctor is so convinced by it that he's actually giving himself these injections. So he's been won over by it anyway. I'll wait for the some more data on it. But it's interesting, if you can attack that, adding telomeres or
I was going to say that your cells naturally start losing their NAD plus concentrations as you grow older. So I'm pretty comfortable with that, but maybe not just yet, but it's expensive. So maybe like in 10 years, I'm all for it. And hopefully by then we'll have more studies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not in a rush, thankfully, you and I are in a position where we can wait for the studies to come out. If someone's 90 and they're like, okay, how do I really maximize the time I have left, or maybe extend it? Maybe they just, consider it without as much data. But it's interesting. And so there are a lot of these treatments that people are trying to do just that. But you can stack on another 40 years of peak physical health by just not eating poison. Pretty simple concept.
Exactly. No side effects there.
No. Except physical glory and feeling amazing. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. Great. Okay. So where do you see yourself in a few years? What is your general kind of direction that you want to take everything you're doing with? Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to keep educating people into, diet and nutrition, to do with the carnivore diet and so forth, and really try to make that mainstream. I think it will. I think in sort of 5-10 years, this will be a very mainstream diet. And even 3 years ago, when I would tell people what I was doing, they looked at me like I had 3 heads. They're like, what the hell is this guy on about? And you know, and then it just would be just a long conversation. I'd have to explain myself like 3 times a day. It'd be like taking like an hour out to like explain this stuff. And it was time consuming, but, you know, now it comes up and, you know, might be out or whatever. And I just order meat and they're like, oh, you just order meat? And I was like, yeah, I just do carnivore. And I can just say that now. They go like, oh yeah, you know, my brother's doing that, or my this is doing that. Like, oh, that's really cool. And now it's like, you know, people actually know about it. I think in 5-10 years, I think that this is just going to be an accepted mainstream diet and way of eating, at least by the general public, you know, if not, you know, the powers that be that are going to make their recommendations for whatever reason they make them. But I think it will be widespread enough. And so that's what I want to do is keep educating people, work in preventative medicine, keep people healthy, start them off healthy, keep them healthy so they don't need medicine in the first place. Certainly want to keep going with neurosurgery. Absolutely love surgery and neurosurgery in particular. And that's something that just fascinates me. And I absolutely love being able to do that for people as well. But I would also want to, you know, incorporate that into my practice as well. And, you know, people are having chronic pain and back issues and, you know, referred pain from, you know, nerve compression and so forth. This is something that can be very much helped by dietary changes, because you're going to experience less inflammation, you're going to experience less pain. And so, you know, even if you do have a problem that can't be fixed with surgery, or maybe something that could be fixed with surgery, but gets fixed without needing surgery, you know, that's something that's going to be very beneficial to people. And so, you know, honestly, my hope is in the next however many years to get medicine back the way it was, you know, a century ago, which is, you know, not with the technology, but what we were treating, because right now we're only treating chronic diseases. That's basically by and large all we're treating. Whereas historically, for thousands and thousands of years, we basically treated 5 things. You know, we're treating, you know, pregnancy and childbirth, you know, birth and delivery, you know, childhood, you know, diseases and problems, congenital, genetic issues, and then, you know, trauma, infectious disease, right? And then poisoning, right? So you come into, you know, contact with something, you get poisoned. So those were sort of the main things that we were doing. Now it's all chronic disease. Well, really what it is, it's all poisoning. So that you know, that little finger of what we treated as doctors, you know, toxic, you know, exposure and so forth, is now the main thing, because we are introducing toxins and poisons into our diet, and we're saying this is good for you, you need to keep eating it. Just like when they said, oh, smoking's no good for you. Oh, smoking's actually good for you. Oh, having a couple of drinks a day, oh, that's really good for your heart. Okay, is it? Like, I don't care if people drink, I don't care if people smoke. That's an adult decision that they can make for themselves. But I don't want doctors telling them it's good for them. Like, that pisses me off. And so, you know, right now, you know, everyone's saying you have to go plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. And like, I'm sorry, but you are really hurting people. And so I want that to change. And I want people to be able to be healthy and to get rid of all these stupid chronic diseases that don't need to be there. Because I don't think that they're diseases per se. You know, I think that these are toxicities and malnutrition, right? A toxic buildup of species inappropriate diet and a lack of species, you know, specific nutrition, namely too many plants, not enough meat, you know, and this is what's causing disease. And it's so easy. It's so, well, it's simple anyway. It may not be easy for people to do it, but it is simple. It is straightforward. You get rid of poison, you stop being poisoned. And so when you do that, you know, these issues go away. Diabetes goes away, heart disease goes away, autoimmune issues go away. You know, even certain cancers and so forth can be, you know, extremely helped by doing these very simple diet changes. And so that's what I want. I want to get rid of these stupid things so that we don't have these anymore. We can go back to where medicine was simple and straightforward, and we actually had problems that arose from, you know, the environment and our genes. It was much easier back then. It was much easier for people as well. They didn't need to go to the doctor all the time. They didn't need all this hands-on stuff. You know, we have an overburdened medical system everywhere in the world. And, you know, we can talk about what system is the right one, but if you have billions of people who have chronic diseases that are extremely expensive and time-consuming to treat, you're going to overrun any system. And if you look at it this way, 9% of Americans are diabetic. Those 9% of people take up 75% of the Medicare costs in America. 75%. And now realize that 40% of Americans are pre-diabetic. Okay. So ostensibly, if they don't change what they're doing, and, unless something major happens like this movement, there's no reason that they will change what they're doing. In, a decade or so, we'll have, close to 50% of our population diabetic. What's that going to do? What's that going to do to the healthcare system? How's that going to work with our overrun hospitals and paying just an arm and a leg for everything that we're doing? That's your healthcare crisis. That's the problem right there, is just eating the wrong thing and suffering the consequences of it. And instead of recognizing this as a poison and saying, okay, you need to remove this poison, we're treating this as a disease. Well, it didn't exist 50 years ago. Like, why is this a disease now? Where did that come from? We had people who had these things. We certainly didn't have them in the number. Before the dietary recommendations, changed from the USDA saying that that cholesterol caused heart disease, and to stop eating this, we stopped eating meat, we stopped eating fat, we started eating more fruits and vegetables. The cancer rates tripled, heart disease tripled, stroke rate tripled, and type 2 diabetes increased by 6-fold. Okay. Yeah. So, and all the rest of it all increased as well. So, and they all increased at the same time, right? So again, this is correlation, it's not causation, but it's a pretty damn strong association. And, you increased your type 2 diabetes rate by, 6-fold, right? That can just go away just as easily. Something changed in our environment. Our genetics did not change in the course of a decade or two. That's not how population genetics works. Something happened in our environment, right? So I argue that it was from the change in our diet, as I've mentioned, but it is something happened. And so if you identify what that something is and you undo it, it will undo that problem. So what does that mean? That means these are not diseases. That means that these are products of our environment. Something happened to cause this to us. Right. So we recognize what that is. We take that away. It goes away. And that's what I want to do. That's my long-term sort of mission, is to, I don't know, make a lot of doctors very bored for not having a lot to do.
That's a very inspiring mission. And I think we're all rooting for you. So that's amazing. Anthony, where can everybody find you with regards to social media?
So I'm mostly on Instagram, which is just AnthonyChaffeeMD, and I post a lot there, and I have a lot of sort of blog posts and with ideas and thoughts about carnivore and different sorts of teachings and things like that I think that are useful. I also have a website, thecarnivorelife.com, and I'm going to try to actually put up a lot of those blog posts on there. It's not really built yet. It's not too much on there, but it's coming. I'm going to try to put some of the articles and things like that I've written there, so it's just more easily found. And then I have a podcast called The Plant-Free MD, and it's definitely on Spotify, and I'm just dealing with Apple and Android and so forth to get it on there. It's on Amazon and all the other little ones, but I'm working to get that on iTunes and the Android platforms as well, Google. And then I have a YouTube channel, and that's probably where I do the most stuff. And that again is just AnthonyChaffeeMD, and I've got a number of videos up there, and I also have a number of interviews just like this that I have in my my sort of what is it,
collection,
little channel or something like that. Yeah, exactly. So you can go onto the carnivore sort of section and see the different sort of videos that I've curated in there that I've done, or that I've been interviewed on, or that I think are beneficial. So yeah, those are the main ones.
Awesome. I'll make sure that I link everything in the description box below so that everybody can find you easily. Thank you so much, Anthony. This has been wonderful. Thank you for accepting my invite. I'm really excited that we did this. Is there any last message you would like to leave everybody with?
No, I think pretty much covered it. And when just, I guess one thing I'll say, when people do carnivore, they think of it as just eating a lot more meat, which of course is what you want to do. But the main trick is just not eating all the other things, because as I've said, those are the things that actually cause harm. The meat benefits you, that's your main nutrition source, but plants actually harm you. And so the trick is to really not eat that stuff. And I talk to a lot of people and help people out when they're getting on this. and they're saying, oh, I'm having this problem or that problem. It's not really quite working for me. And it always comes down to the fact that they're still, drinking coffee with stevia or having this or having that, and they're doing things that have plants, and these plants have toxins, and that's why they're having these problems. And then when they eliminate those, their problems go away. So my hard rule is no plants, no sugar, nothing artificial. And that goes for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. I'm really just full on meat and water, salt to taste. If you want it, you don't have to. And I don't eat organ meats. You don't have to eat organ meats. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And I certainly don't have any sort of fruits or honey or sugar or anything like that. And that's the main thing, is that these things actively harm us. And that's why I avoid them specifically.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us till the end. If you like this content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.